Anchor Church, hey, how are you? Look, we've just finished with our Sunday message here at church, and we've looked at Titus chapter 3, verses 3 through 8. So that's what we're going to be doing here as we go through this Going Deeper segment. And if you're unfamiliar with what Going Deeper is, it's our opportunity and our chance to maybe empower you to be a group leader. We would love for these to be discussed over dinner with a friend or a family member, or maybe a new relationship here at church. But we would love for these to be questions that aren't just answered by yourself, but that you're actually answering in the context of community, because we believe that we grow best when we grow together. So I want you to pause for a moment on this video and read Titus chapter 3, verses 3 through 8, so you kind of know what it was that we were just talking about. Once you're done, you can go ahead and come back and join us with some questions. Great. Well, here are some of the questions, starting at verse 3 of Titus chapter 3. And we saw that Paul before he goes into this beautiful gospel presentation, talks about the way life used to be. He talks about the way life used to be, and it's marked by things like disobedience, foolishness, and that our life is actually enslaves to lusts and pleasures. Now, it's important to note here that lusts and pleasures aren't necessarily physical or maybe even sexual lusts and pleasures like we're accustomed to in the scriptures. He's talking about the desires of your heart, things that you long for, things like your career or financial independence, or things that in and of themselves might not necessarily be bad. So here's the question for you. When you look at verse 3, does this describe more of who you were or more of who you are? More of who you were or more of who you are? In other words, are there some areas in your life where you see that you're chasing some pleasurable experiences at the expense of being disobedient or foolish or living life in a way that's honoring to the Lord? So again, hit pause here. Feel free to discuss that question after you guys have wrapped that up. Come back. We got 2 more questions for you. Awesome. Well, our next question could be found by looking at verse 5. In verse 5, it says that God saved us, not because of the righteous things you and I have done, but because of His mercies. This tells us that we don't contribute anything to God restoring us or making us right in relationship to Him. So here's our question. Have you ever, whether in the past or in the present, found yourself trying to earn God's favor by doing or not doing something? Have you found yourself trying to earn God's favor by doing or not doing something? A good way to figure this out is to ask yourself this. When you sin, do you believe God sees you differently? When you sin, do you believe God sees you differently? I know that this is a sensitive question, and I know that this might be a little bit more vulnerable than some of the other questions, but I really believe that this could be valuable. So I want you to take some time, again, answer some of these questions and pray, and just repent. Confess before the Lord. Say, Lord, I see my nature to want to earn your favor, but help me remember the gospel that it's by your grace and your grace alone. Hit pause, go ahead, talk about this question, come back for one final question. Awesome. Well, our last question can be found in verse 8. Verse 8 says, these teachings, the things that Paul has just said, these teachings are good and beneficial for everyone. For everyone. And I want to focus on the words good and beneficial, because when we find something of benefit in our life, we usually implement it. We start doing something that's beneficial, and we incorporate that into our rhythms and our life. So here is your question. Do you believe that living a life according to how God has called you to live is beneficial? Do you believe that it's beneficial, or do you maybe believe that you're missing out, that it's not as good as other things? So again, you can go ahead and take some time to answer this question. I do want to note something really quickly. Notice that it's not, do you agree, but do you believe? Simple agreement, we can agree with things that don't have any impact on our life, but when we believe, our belief translates into action. So again, do you believe that living life according to how God has called you to live is good and beneficial? That's your last question. Go ahead, hit pause. The video will end after this. Thank you so much for tuning into this Going Deeper, and we hope and pray that this content, these questions, that they would stir you in how you see the Lord and how you love Him and one another.